Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Doug Bennett. I'm the Vice President for Federal and International Affairs at the Liberty Mutual Group. Liberty Mutual is honored to be a sponsor of this year's Global Services Summit, and I would like to commend Chairman Bill Toppetta for his leadership, President Bob Bastine, and the fine work of the small but nimble CSI staff. With our economy increasingly driven by the Asia-Pacific region, our next discussion is especially timely. Many companies, including my own, are engaged in this region. We look forward to the opportunities provided there, but with opportunities, of course, come challenges, and our challenge is to fashion a regional trading system that embraces and builds on the principles that we all hold dear, those of free and open trade. One of the most promising and exciting developments in Asia is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We are pleased to be joined by several key officials involved in those discussions. While China, a company of great interest to my company and most of us in this room, is not a member of the TPP negotiations, it plays a major role in the region. China's services trade is growing very rapidly and is a priority for the Chinese government. So to discuss China's role in the Asia-Pacific region and to set the stage for our TPP ministerial discussion, I'm delighted to introduce a well-known scholar on Asia-Pacific issues, a man whose work I've watched for many years, Charles Freeman. Charles holds the Freeman Chair in China Studies at CSIS here in Washington. He concentrates on the political economy of China and other parts of East Asia, and on U.S.-China relations, particularly trade and economic relations. Charles is a second-generation China hand, has lived and worked between Asia and the United States for his entire life. During his government career, he served as Assistant USTR for China Affairs, and in this capacity was the Chief U.S. Negotiator in China's ascension to the WTO. During his tenure as Assistant USTR, he oversaw efforts to integrate China into the global trading architecture and, of course, into the WTO. Earlier in his government career, he served as legislative counsel in the United States Senate. Outside of government, as a lawyer and business advisor, he counsels corporations and financial institutions on strategic planning, government relations, market access, mergers, acquisitions, corporate communications, political, and risk management. He is currently a senior advisor to McLarty and Associates here in Washington, D.C., and serves on the board of directors of the National Committee of U.S.-China Relations and the Harding-Loevner Emerging Market Fund. Please join me in welcoming Charles Freeman.
Good afternoon. I want to congratulate everyone here, but also and particularly Bob Bastine and CSI for a really timely and important conference. This is a bit of a labor of love for me, so I'm really delighted that Bob asked me not only to talk about China's role in Asia, to set the stage for discussion about TPP and other trade issues related to services in Asia. But it's profoundly important, I think, for all of us that believe strongly in open markets to continue to speak our minds here in Washington and to continue to beat the drum of trade liberalization. Trade has become a bit of a bad word here in Washington, and I think those of us that recognize the benefits and the profound gifts to society that trade has generated need to keep reminding folks of that. With that, I mean, we did a survey a few years ago at CSIS, Center for Strategic and International Studies, looking at attitudes towards regionalism in Asia. And one of the striking things about that was that at a time when most of us were feeling pretty down about U.S. soft power, the role of the United States in Asia and the rest of the world, and thinking that we kind of had lost a bit of our step along the way with adventurism in the Middle East and the like. There was a survey looking at of elites in Asia and in the United States, and the question was, who has the most soft power in Asia? And the U.S. actually thought that we had a relatively low soft power in Asia. Everyone else, with the exception of China, thought that the United States by far had the most soft power, the most drive in Asia. The only groups that thought China had the most soft power in Asia were the United States and China, which suggests that there is a little worry and concern in the rest of Asia about China's rise. And even though many folks are delighted with to take advantage of the Chinese economic miracle and the drive towards Asian regional trade integration that it has helped bring about, there's a lot of nervousness and a desire really for the United States to maintain engaged in Asia. And I think the TPP is a very important effort in that regard. It's making sure that we continue to push and continue to drive and continue to be there in Asia while the rest of the world is a little bit nervous about China. One of the things to look for, and I know that the great miracle of trade over the last 10, 15 years has been the remarkable intra-Asia trade explosion that has taken place. You know, the great bulk, which obviously is intermediate goods, but a huge explosion in services around that trade as well. The question that I think a lot of us have, though, is going forward, what happens when U.S. consumer demand inevitably decreases to a certain extent? You know, when the United States has been running at about 70% of GDP being consumption, as that inevitably comes down as credit crunches and the like, what happens to intra-Asia intermediate trade? Because ultimately a lot of that trade is destined for final consumption in the United States and Europe, and as we consume less, who's going to pick up the slack? The concern obviously has to be if China does not, or India or others do not develop a rapid increase in domestic consumption, there could be a contraction of that trade, and perhaps even a move towards preserving some of the benefits of final market expansion for one's own economy. So you can see a China that is concerned that it is losing some of its exports to the rest of the world, to the United States in particular, that begins to say, well, let's contract our imports from Asia. Let's try to do more of this internally. And you see warning signs of that along the way, not just in China, but I think throughout the world, where there is an increasing sense of, okay, can we invent it here? What can we do indigenously? What can we do in terms of developing technology and services domestically in China or other parts of the world that will allow us to be somewhat, to have a competitive advantage with others? And how can we reduce, therefore, the impact of trade internally or from the rest of the world? So I think going forward, efforts like the TPP are important not just because of what they say about America's commitment to the region, but also for what they say about the commitment to liberalization generally, the commitment to open markets and keeping the ball rolling at a time when rolling that ball is looking like a more and more uphill battle.